Welcome to the post game, everybody. Michael Brooks Show. Very happy to be here. Appreciate each and every one of you. We've got a ton to get to, as we always do. But we're going to start, and I'm very, very happy to do this with a very special guest. Actually a person who's responsible for the connection with Dr. West to begin with. So this is kind of a reunion of sorts. But we're going to be talking about a very important present pressure campaign in the first part of the postgame. Piper Winkler is a student organizer with Harvard for Bernie, and also now the 40 billion for what campaign. Piper, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So Piper, can you just get us up to speed on what the 40 billion, basically what the 40 for what campaign, and I want to just say, I mean, we won't belabor it, but I mean, you guys did an incredible amount of work for Bernie Sanders, and you're taking it, the skill sets and the communities that you guys developed, and you're taking it into a really important campaign, which I will say, I mean, Harvard is really working hard here to conform to all of our absolute worst expectations about it as an institution.
Pretty much, yeah.
So tell us, what is the campaign about? What are you guys fighting for, and what's happening with the workers at Harvard?
Absolutely. So just as a group, Harvard for Bernie saw Bernie Sanders leave the 2020 presidential race, and our question was very much not, do we continue, but rather, how do we continue? We knew that we wanted to go forward and keep fighting for people we don't know. I believe that, this movement will go on and must go on with all of us. It doesn't stop because of one presidential race or one person. Yep. So when we got the email back in March letting us know that students had to move off campus, automatically, once people moved off campus, workers began entering the dorms and cleaning the residential spaces after the student exit. And what we began hearing is that workers at the school weren't being provided with any kind of PPE or social distancing measures, and that their masks, for example, were being donated by students. And around the same time, a bunch of us got an email letting us know that the school president, Larry Bacow, had contracted coronavirus. It's very interesting. It's very much a kind of study in class warfare. So our president, Larry Bacow, began to experience the symptoms of coronavirus. He went to the doctor, and the very next day, he got a test for coronavirus, and he found out that it was positive. He began to recover, and he's doing well now. At the same time, workers on the campus that he's responsible for running don't have access to PPE. They don't have access to paid sick leave, so that people actually began to get sick after cleaning the dorms and during student move out. Didn't have access to proper masks or any of that kind of etiquette or attire that would help them to be safe. So our campaign is about calling for that to end. 40 billion for what is a reference to Harvard's endowment. It's actually the biggest academic endowment in the world, $40.9 billion as of the fiscal year 2019. So our purpose is to start a broader conversation about how we should be leveraging our massive endowment during a time of great, financial public health crisis to help all members of the Harvard community, especially those who are the most vulnerable, so workers and students. And what our demands are first of all, that immediately Harvard begin to offer workers paid sick leave, and that all work becomes entirely optional, no exceptions. This should apply to all workers broadly. For workers who do continue to stay on the job, they should be given they should be given hazard pay, because it does require special dangers to be working during this time. Peer schools like MIT and Yale are already doing this, so Harvard should easily be stepping up to the plate here. We're also saying that workers should be given PPE and social distancing measures should be enforced, really basic stuff. One last thing that's important to us is that all students have access to healthcare during this time. Students were sent home to be safe, and of course, you can't be safe during a global pandemic if you don't have access to affordable healthcare. So people should have the option to enroll in the student health plan without paying any premiums. So essentially, it would be free with financial aid.
So what is the, first of all, actually, before I get to the response of the university, that's incredible that you can point to MIT and Yale doing some of these things already. What has been your mechanism for trying to organize as everybody's in quarantine?
Oh, absolutely. So Harvard for Bernie has done a lot of organizing work that was led by the larger national level Students for Bernie program. Some of the things that we learned about during the Students for Bernie webinars, which were on Zoom long before it was cool, we're doing things like relational organizing, which is something that I'd really recommend to any organizer. Being able to keep in touch with the people in your network, checking in to see how they're doing, what efforts are important to them, and making personal connections. So for example, as somebody who's at risk for the coronavirus because I have asthma, reaching out to share my story personally and to reach out to others who might have personal connections to issues at hand to let them know, I'm fighting for these causes. They're really important to me. They should be important to the people who are in my circles, and that, we all ought to be in this together as a project of solidarity to stand up for workers and students during this time. So I think relational organizing really has helped us all stay together, stay connected on things like Zoom and Discord. We have our weekly meetings where we share all of our efforts and plan what happens next. And so that's been things like video launches of testimonials, sharing our petition, things like that have been, have helped us to very much keep this campaign moving.
Awesome. How have you built bridges with workers at the Harvard campus? And how do you make the connection between students and people who work at various parts? I mean, people should really think of just how incredibly complicated universities are to run. It's a huge amount of people working. How have you kind of built out those relationships, and how are you doing it?
Oh, absolutely. So I and other organizers with Harvard for Bernie have been lucky enough to work with some really amazing members of the labor organizing community on Harvard's campus. So the Student Labor Action Movement, SLAM, and the Harvard Graduate Student Union, HGSU, have both been very helpful to us. They've helped us to get in contact with workers, and they've provided feedback and actually helped us with the wording of our campaign demands. So having connections like that, and we both Harvard for Bernie members and HGSU SLAM members really see this as a larger opportunity for solidarity. We know there's power in numbers. Obviously, the power in numbers of Harvard comes in the power of how large the endowment is, how powerful and large the administration is. But we know that working together with all of us, we have a much greater chance of being successful.
Absolutely. So what has the response of the university been so far?
So far, they have not responded to our demands at all. They've essentially moved forward in their program of belt tightening, austerity. We've heard about hiring freezes, salary freezes, but we're very much determined to continue in such a way that we're impossible to ignore. And so our movement is really gaining traction. We're getting more signatures on our petition, more videos, testimonials from workers and from students. So things are only beginning for 40 billion for what?
Do you feel sometimes, and I've heard the phrase that Harvard is not really a university. It's a prestigious learning program attached to a hedge fund?
Oh, very much. Yeah, there's very much a sense of the Harvard brand. And I think this has basically been an incredible crash course in political will for me, because a lot of my conversations with people about what's possible to do with the endowment, my rhetoric about let's use the money to provide PPE, to provide paid sick leave, have been met with criticism like, well, the endowment is tied up in a bunch of really complicated ways. You can't just spend this money all over the place. It's earmarked, some of it has to go to our $700 lawn chairs. It's really, really important that we have $700 lawn chairs, obviously.
Of course.
But, I'm very much aware of the fact that Harvard can spend money on whatever it wants to. If it wants to shore up enough funding to be able to support its workers and students, it'll do that. If it wants to use that money to, invest in fossil fuels, well, we certainly know it's good at doing that too. So absolutely. I think the Harvard brand makes very clear decisions at times like this to save money and to not put it toward the well-being of its community. And we're hoping to turn that around.
How do you see this as connected with all of the other movements that are starting to take place, like the Amazon strikes, people's walking out at work, and the kind of real incredible opportunity? I mean, you do look at the founding of important things like the Workers' Party in Brazil, that the relationship between students and workers and other people involved, it does always seem to take shape around really concrete political projects like this with very direct material demands. So even as Harvard is being very disgusting, and I'll say that that's my editorial, so leave your student be, Do you see how this not only is obviously incredibly important and basic for the Harvard campus, but also fits into a bigger struggle and bigger trends?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, certainly with the way that a lot of students for Bernie groups are operating right now, again, moving beyond the movement simply to get Bernie elected, which was never what it was really, only about. It was obviously more about a larger project of political revolution. I've talked to a lot of other campus organizers who are doing the same kinds of things on their campus. University of Kansas, for example, the University of Connecticut is running an amazing pressure campaign that's getting out the word about the fact that student dining hall workers aren't being paid. Everybody Eats But UConn is the name of their project. So I think, yeah, absolutely. People are realizing that the question being asked right now is, which side are you on? I think before the coronavirus, it was easier for institutions like Harvard or UConn or Amazon to put up the front of, we're taking care of our workers, we're creating a nice environment and we're putting out a good product for our customers, which is essentially what Harvard students are. We're customers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the which side are you on question comes up during the coronavirus. We see exactly how much they're willing to cut funding. And, when the belt tightening has to happen, the austerity has to go into effect. It's for the people who are the most marginalized. So that's become really obvious. And I think across the board, organizers are going to tap into that energy.
What can we do to help you guys?
So wonderful. Well, thank you for asking. I think right now, one of the most important things people can do, please go to check out our info sheet. You can go to our tinyurl.com/40 billion info. You can also check out, and please do this, and if you can share it as well, you can sign our petition, which is tinyurl.com/H4B petition. And anything that you can do to spread the word about this would be so appreciated. We know that every day that our demands aren't met is another day that Harvard workers are going without adequate protections on the job. They're not being paid, they're being put in danger. Students don't have access to adequate healthcare. That's not a reality I can live with, and that's not a reality Harvard for Bernie can live with. And we're really putting out a larger call to leftists everywhere because we know that a better world is possible and we all need to work for that.
Well, Piper, yeah, and look, let's make the Harvard brand. Let's put that into play because this is actually very embarrassing. And it's something that if they feel some pressure and some sense of failed public relations, that will have an effect. So Piper Winkler, I really, really appreciate it. And I want to say hi to Sam and everybody else. It was awesome meeting all of you guys and the work is great. And I'm so glad you're doing this. And please do, of course, stay safe. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Take care.
You just watched a Michael Brooks Show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.